We start with introducing our panel to everybody. We have a very strong, very powerful panel, lots of experience, and I'm sure we'll get some interesting views and we'll walk away with something that we all think about. So let me start the introduction with our chief guest for the day. Very, very honored to have you here with us, Dr. Rajesh Verma, Additional Director, Indian Customs. Let me give you a brief introduction to Dr. Rajesh Kumar Verma. Dr. Verma is a 1997 batch civil service officer belonging to Indirect Taxation and Customs of India. He's a trained physician, medical MD, with also a degree in law, LLB. He's also co-authored 2 books on the Right to Information RTI Act, which were published by Taxman. He is now working as Additional Director General of the Taxpayer Services at the Mumbai unit since December 2019. He currently holds charge for states of Maharashtra, Goa, Gujarat, Rajasthan, MP, and Chhattisgarh. Sir, we are so very privileged that you took the time to join us today. Thank you once again on behalf of all of us. Mr. K. Contractor, panelist, is Director of a family-owned business, Mayur C. Contractor, 17 plus years as business owner in the freight forwarding industry. He's a trained trainer by International Freight Forwarders Association. He's president of the Indian Institute of Freight Forwarders. He's ex-com member, Federation of Freight Forwarder Association of India. He has specialized in customs clearance, supply chain management, freight forwarding, and in education. We also have with us Captain Krish, Captain Krishnamurthy, founder, CEO of Trim Sail Digital Solutions, who commenced his career at sea in 1982 as a deck cadet with DCI, Dredging Corporation of India. He moved to mainstream merchant navy with SR Shipping in 1986 and has since served in ascending capacities with Univan, Bergeson Worldwide, Bernard Schultz, and Tanker Pacific. I request the others to please put themselves on mute as we hear some disturbance. Thank you. Captain Krish has recently ventured into digitalization of shipping, and he believes there are tremendous opportunities in this space to enhance safety, environmental conservation, and efficiency. He's been a member of the Nautical Institute since 1996 and has played a key role in setting up the South India branch in 2001. In May 2012, he was elected president of the Nautical Institute for a 2-year term, even as he held his day job with Sanmar Shipping. He has the honor of being the first non-European and the youngest to have held the position in the Nautical Institute. Welcome, Captain Krish. Welcoming also Captain Yogesh Gaur, Head of HR with ICT in JM Bakshi Group. Captain Gaur started his career with the Indian Armed Forces in 2002 as a commissioned officer and has performed various staff and field appointments, which include human resources and man management aspects of the company as company commander. He joined the global metal and mining company Vedanta Resources, well known all over the world, in Jan 2010, and worked in critical roles at the copper, port, power, and now in the mining business as well. He joined JM Bakshi Group in January 2020. He is currently heading HR for port, infra, logistics, and agency businesses of the group. He's based at Mumbai in the corporate office. Welcome, Captain. Introducing Mr. Manish Jaiswal, President of Portall Infosystems. He has over 25 years of experience in strategic roles of IT, service delivery, IT transformation, operational efficiency and optimization, asset management, and enterprise service delivery. And his areas of expertise include business alignment, technology governance, technology management, project portfolio management, infrastructure management, training, risk management, and innovation. Manish is also passionate about education, particularly to the less privileged. And last but not the least, I would like to introduce Mark, Mr. Mark Goodger, who owns GMLS in South Africa. A very privileged to have you here with us, Mark. Mark is co-hosting this event with us. And Mark, GMLS and Portall have been in a collaborative relationship for about 1.5 years now. Mark has over 30 years of experience, starting with being in the customs, being a customs officer himself in South Africa. He has played various roles and ascended the ladder in aspect of being an officer. After leaving his tenure with the Customs Department, he set up the Institute for Training, and today, for over 20 years now, has been in the business of training both officers of the South African Customs, as well as students, industry, and business areas in aspects of customs, as well as freight forwarding and supply chain management. Mark is also one of the master trainers under the UCO and the ICC. He conducts trainings all around the world and is invited to present various areas of topical importance in the fields of supply chain management and customs. Particularly to his credit is the fact that the officer level training and the mandatory examinations that customs officials in South Africa go through are conducted by Mark as one of the trusted trainers for the region. Thank you so much, Mark. What I say may not do you justice, but really privileged to have you here. Thank you.
Thank you.
So with this, we get started. Roshan, I haven't seen Paige here. I hope he's here. If you can quickly take a look and help him get on.
I'm here.
Oh, that's great. Thanks, Paige. So the format for this particular session is we start with some opening remarks. Then we move on to a few questions that have been lodged in advance by people during the time of registration. Attendees could also lodge further remarks, questions and answers in, questions and comments in the Q&A section of the webinar panel. If we do not have time to address them during the event, we'll write back to you one-to-one. Leanne, if we can see you really quickly, the audience can. Hi, Leanne. Leanne is going to join me today as co-moderator, and one half of the event I will take over, and then I'll hand over to Leanne for the closing remarks, and thank you to the audience. Getting started now. So for the opening remarks, as the audience would have seen, we have such a powerful panel. We have people representing various aspects of this wonderful industry that we're all a part of, the supply chain and logistics industry. My question for opening remarks remains a single question, and I request the panelists to speak from their area of experience and share their thoughts. The question is, what are the training needs that you encounter? And in your opinion, can e-learning be leveraged to meet these needs? Over to the panelists. Sorry, my mistake. Captain Krish, could I ask you to start, please?
I thought you'd not ask.
Sorry.
No. Thank you. Hello, everyone. Wonderful to be here. Post-COVID, I think it's extremely relevant to have a chat about this e-learning and its role. From what I can see, I mean, the global economy seems to be in a bit of a meltdown thanks to this situation, but few industries which are still doing very well. Shipping, surprisingly, is still strong. Airlines is collapsed in itself. On the other hand, e-learning and any kind of online learning systems, they've always been there for the last 10, 20 years. People have been talking about it. There have been incremental movements. As you can understand, a huge uptick in that, that you can't even get good content developers because they're very busy with orders, the scale at which things seem to be moving. So, the answer is yes, there is an overwhelming opportunity here, provided we call the right boxes. I obviously represent the sea side and the marine side of shipping operations in the supply chain. So I'd like to give you a very quick overview, of the marine industry as such, merchant shipping. We have, at the last count, 2 billion deadweight floating at sea. That's ton miles of service, running into several trillions of dollars of freight income. And then you have to run those ships, something close, I mean, depending on if you're talking of more than 1,000 gross ton ships, there are 50,000 ships in all. And if you include all ships and all kinds of marine craft, there are 90,000 marine craft floating in the oceans today. And they are supported and they are run by anything between 1.5 to 2 million seafarers. These are the people with highly specialized skills that need training and continuous retraining. There was a time we could all bring them to one location geographically and train, and today obviously things have changed, and therefore the scope is, as I said, tremendous. There are different competency needs for seafarers at the support, operational and management levels, from marine engineering, navigation, cargo operations, risk management, regulatory compliance, wellness at sea. These are all areas which need to be addressed. And it doesn't end there, because most of them move on up the value chain ashore to positions of responsibilities as managers. And within technical operations, chartering, crewing, again, compliance, performance, and sale and purchase, and these functions require a tremendous amount of relearning. We used to do that through mentoring. That still has relevance today, but with this kind of social distancing and work from home environment, that is under stress. So I mean, if you were to group all these the functions once the mariners come ashore, they include claims, legal, insurance, agency, crew training, port-related activities like pilotage, conservancy of ports, dredging, vessel traffic management systems, agency work, classification, surveys, regulations, quality assurance, and vetting and TMSA, project cargoes. So the list is endless. The specializations, the sectors are tremendous. E-learning, there is a lot of scope for knowledge and skill transfer. And I emphasize skill is a huge element of any competency development here. So it's just not knowledge transfer alone. The regulatory training is a B2C business, really, because every seafarer is expected to train and present his qualifications to be able to work on a ship or ashore. On the other hand, there is value-add training that the shipping industry is looking for to prevent inefficiencies and incidents. So that is a B2B business. Again, there's tremendous scope, especially if we pick on gap areas. Gap areas are areas of training which nobody has so far touched upon, but continue to be critical to the shipping industry. So the trick is to pick those and work on it. And in terms of attitudinal skills, analytical skills, troubleshooting skills, building resilience through training, through drills, through empowerment. These are all areas which we've been doing that through direct engagement within the corporate world. Again, as I said, now in the post-COVID world, that is going to be a huge gap that is staring at us. So I will leave you with those thoughts within the marine sector and come back to address anything that arises from that. Thank you, Meera.
Thank you so much, Captain Krish. It was like a directory, a dictionary from A to Z. And it's true, we don't realize the breadth and the depth within the maritime side, just the seafaring side. Look, I'm excited to see what the others have to say. Request Captain Gore, would you go next, please? What would your response be to the same question?
Yeah, so good afternoon, everyone. And first of all, it is my great privilege and honor to be part of this webinar along with the eminent panel members. And thank you, Meera, for wonderful introduction. So as Meera said that I represent JM Bakshi Group, which is into a diversified businesses ranging from shipping services, infrastructure, logistics, and technology vertical. So here my answer will be focused more on port, terminal, and infrastructure. And as Captain Chris told about various training needs relating to marine line, our training needs are a bit simple. So when it comes to the training need, it is primarily bifurcated into two segments. One is basically your skill based, and second is about the behavioral training programs. So now again, if we talk about the e-learning opportunity, so when it comes to behavioral based training program, there are abundance of opportunities which are available in the market, and any company can go and utilize those services and get the behavioral training for their team, done. But as I said, for our kind of industry, which is more of a labor intensive, our success depends upon how seamless our operational practices are. And it is also vital for us, therefore, that we focus more on a skill-based training program, which is commonly, called as technical trainings in the terminal kind of language. So if I have to categorize the training needs in port, terminal, and infrastructure business, so it ranges from equipment management, which is critical for us. Second comes to operations. Once equipment is maintained, then there is an operation team which performs operation. There is a very important aspect that comes into play is safety and compliance. And any organization would like to put focus on safety and compliance in order to be on the right side of the law. And then last but not the least, behavioral training program. So we are also now exploring opportunities that how we can strengthen our e-learning journey at our port terminals. So some of the options which we discussed, deliberated, and also in the process of implementation, one is your scenario-based learning. Second is we are also now getting into case studies in digital module, which probably can give a kind of insight to our team at the terminals. We also have a dream of setting up a big simulation center, which can be utilized by all our terminals. And probably we have also zeroed down the location part. We want to set it up at Paradeep. Another option which comes to my mind is gamification, which makes the e-learning process very engaging. Otherwise, it adds and it's add life to the otherwise dull compliances module. So few more which I would quickly probably cover is like your videos can be used, animation can be used, just in time kind of module can be used. So these are a couple of options which are available in the market and which all the industries are exploring, in port, terminal, and our kind of environment. And I would say that with the current new normal, new normal, e-learning has a long way to go. And we look forward for more and more innovative solutions to come our way, which basically meets our requirement and strengthen the, skill of the team which is at the terminal. So Meera, that's, as of now from my side about the port, terminal, and infrastructure sector.
Thank you so much. I think that was really useful, particularly interesting to know, as you mentioned, there's a feeling that port terminal infrastructure is an area which is not so perhaps, modern, and you brought up things like simulation, gamification. So automatically we realize that new normal is really going to be a place where all of us are thinking similarly. Thank you. Sage, I request you please to give us your opening remarks. The question remains the same. What are training needs that you run into in the freight forwarding industry, and do you see e-learning as something that you can lead? Thank you, Sage.
Thank you, Shamira, and it's a pleasure to be a part of this esteemed panel. Mark, it's great to see you again, and Dr. Rajesh Verma, sir, it's a pleasure to be have you here as well. So just to give you a little bit story before I engage myself. So I'm here, fortunate to be a part of training. When I completed my graduation, I actually went to my dad and I said, "Dad, my studies is over." And little did I know that I'm entering. Well, it was just a stepping stone into a growing encyclopedia of learning. Now, whoever said change is difficult, and I've heard this probably for the last 2 decades since I entered trade. But the issue is change is not difficult. Look at us, how we have adapted. I do not recall attending a webinar pre-COVID. And so today it's been 4 months, and we must have been probably, this is for the 100th webinar that we all are a part of. So we all adapt to change, and we adapt to it rather quickly. So just to speak about logistics, I am speaking about freight forwarding, and it's very important that a lot of people generalize. However, if you see shipping, if you see freight forwarding, you see customs broking, the number of verticals that we have are lots. Just to name a few, when you look at digitization and learning, you have project cargo. Project cargo is very, very different and niche and specific from general cargo. You have dangerous goods. Dangerous goods is another aspect and category which is very underlearned. I see a lot of people handling dangerous goods without having the ability. We saw what happened in Beirut a couple of days ago. It's unfortunate, but handling dangerous goods is something that's very important. Perishables is another aspect. I have yet to come across a program that actually teaches you how to learn how to handle perishable goods in terms of transportation. One that has been a focus in times of COVID has been pharma. So pharma and cold supply chain, there has been a great amount of interest in the recent past. However, you don't see too many programs for that. So general programs are quite a few, but when you go into specialization, that's an area that people can really come about. The last probably half a decade has been very interesting, because up until, when I started my career, up until about 2014 or 15, every bureaucrat, every politician, they spoke about globalization. And they spoke about the world being a global village. Today, we have customs compliances. We have the US having their own set of rules that are coming in with barriers to trade. We have India supporting the Indian industry. Now, the compliance era is becoming a reality. So upgrading skill set is something that's very important. And of course, going into others, value-added services like palletization, laws in destination countries, etc. That being said, e-learning, I was fortunate to be a part of a work session on the Incoterms probably about 4 weeks back. And, little do people know that this is my personal opinion, about 96% of exporters and importers, and probably a large number of logisticians, do not know the Incoterms in great detail. Now, whenever we build a building or whenever we start something, the foundation has to be extremely strong. The Incoterms are a foundation of international trade, and it's alarming that the awareness is so little. E-learning, I think, is it's also, e-learning is this term because there are lots of parts and ways of e-learning. So you can actually use it to accelerate the word. Today, in a classroom, so we have a classroom program that we do in Indian Institute of Freight Forwarding, which is the training arm of FAI. We were able to only hold a class for about 45 or 50 people at a time. With e-learning platforms or LMS, actually, which have come about, we are able to deliver the programs to more than 500 at a time. So I think the world is going to change very, very quickly. We have the millennials who are coming in. So we have exciting times ahead. Thank you, Meera.
Thank you so much, Tej. Dr. Rajesh Verma, sir, would you please give us your thoughts, particularly training needs and learning from the area, that very important area which you serve, sir?
Thank you, Meera, and a very warm welcome to all the other co-presenters. It's nice to be a part of this brainstorming session. Well, talking about customs, the organization from which I come, you see, we have a training of officers as well as a staff which is at the induction stage, and thereafter continuous in-house training, which happens for the rest of their lives. So depending upon the cadre, I mean the level at which the people are entering, initially it is 2 years for Group A officers like me who come in. It's a totally residential program where we live together, we work together, and there are lots of visits to all different places all over the country. Like when we were in training, we visited right from the ports of Visakhapatnam to Chennai to Mumbai, Mangalore, and not only our own organization but of that of others like the Navy people, the BSF people, because at border we interact with them. So it is an interdisciplinary sort of a training. And as the level of responsibility changes, then we have mid-career training program or senior as the level at which somebody has the responsibility and the role. As that changes, there again different levels of training. This training is very holistic. Of course, as I said, it changes from cadre to cadre. So for the inspector staff, it's different. But yes, there's the induction training and then continuous on-ground training. The training essentially comprises of one in terms of content, where we are teaching the exact laws which the officer is supposed to implement. Then there are training regarding skills, right from motor driving to dealing with a firearm to say dealing with a computer, how to run the different programs, and all those things are part of it. And there are also attitudinal and behavioral training. So a typical day of training would start with a physical PT or a yoga. One would have some options, but right from that, then the breakfast, that would be a nutritious one, even something about diet comes in. So this is a very, very comprehensive training program. And the structure for dealing with such a program is that we have a national academy at Faridabad, in the National Capital Territory of Delhi. And then we have regional academies like Mumbai has one, and other places in many parts of the country. Kanpur has another. So that regional academies deal with the local issues also. Well, at the national level, national academies there. So, and that the faculty for this training, we have both in-house faculty as well as outside faculty. People from different walks of life, they come around. We invite right from even film producers. Vidhu Chopra was there once, and Sachin Tendulkar was also there as one of the idols. How they deal with their problems, because one can't say that it's only content. Essentially, we are dealing with lots and lots of issues, especially at senior level, and interdisciplinary approach is needed. And talking about, well, this is about customs and GST, because we are a common department. Officers at Group A level and even Group B level, we keep, and the inspectors also, they keep on changing from one place to another. But for the allied agencies, if I may use that term, allied, the shipping line, the custom house agents, or the warehouses, and all of the other people with whom we work with, well, we don't hold training programs for them. We act more as a regulatory authority. We have certain examinations. If you recall, the DGCA, they conduct the examination for the pilots. That's all. They are not doing the training for the pilots. The person has to learn individually, and for getting a commercial pilot license, he has to pass the test. Similarly, for getting a H card or a G card for a CHA, customer's agent, he has to pass certain tests. And we do carry some sort of regulatory powers that if there are any acts unbecoming of that particular services which they are supposed to do, then we have certain powers to take action against them. When talking about the need for e-learning, yes, as one of the speakers said, these services were there for pretty long. I mean, YouTube in some form, video conferencing in some other form, it was existing. And the process might have gone on slowly for e-learning, except that COVID has precipitated, hastened this process. Now, because of the social distancing, our own training cannot happen in the manner it used to happen earlier. So what is the way out? Way out, of course, one of the easy path is e-learning. Because earlier, typically, some part of the training program which used to happen in a classroom where we are teaching, we are giving inputs, that can be easily done. And maybe by better audio-visual presentations, that can have a better impact in some cases also. Whereas the field visit program, I'm skeptical how much we can do it, but yes, simulation exercises are gradually coming in, even for pilots, when they can simulate driving the aircraft in a simulator. Some part of it can obviously come up, but that remains to be seen how the different platforms for e-learning would adapt to such needs. And yes, they have certain advantages. Scalability is one. Quick update is possible, and we can reach out a lot of people in a very short amount of time. Convenience of 24/7 remains. And this time when it is happening, it is a time when 4G has by and large started getting accepted. People are using it. So we have the backup infrastructure for having a good training program, for having a good web. And maybe with 5G, things would still improve further. Otherwise, half the time in many of the webinars we would have attended, somebody would say, "Can you please hear me?" And somebody would be responding. I don't know, I mean, how this happens, because technical breakdowns do happen. And yes, that can happen with any of the modes. But the fact that with Mumbai being waterlogged, and we can sit around and talk and discuss on this issue, this shows, yes, e-learning has a place. Yes, and I think with this, you may like to go on to the other participant, or if you have anything specific to ask me.
Thank you so much, sir. We do have questions, but I think this is really educative for me particularly, and I'm sure for all attendees. Often times, we feel that there is a veil between the service provider and the regulator. And it's also important that we see that the intent is the same. For if it's ethical business and if it's trade, then we're all actually on one side. And thank you for giving us that insight as to how training needs are met. A lot of things which I took away, particularly in it needing to be interdisciplinary, the content versus the behavior versus the skill, and how the institutes are being put together for various levels of training. Thank you, sir. So with this, Mark, I request you to please give us your thoughts. Training needs as you see them. You could give us also the international context, Mark, if you can, and how you see e-learning as fitting in. Thank you.
Good morning, Meera, and good morning, Dr. Verma. Good morning, Tej. It's always a pleasure to see you again, and Captain Krish, and definitely Captain Yogesh, and then to Manish and Meera, thank you very much for your efforts and your drive in bringing this forward to the Indian community and trade at large. So just to echo Dr. Verma there is no global transaction that can take place without the customs authority. Particularly, you cannot export something, you cannot import something, and in most global transactions, you'll have both sides that you must comply with in order for a global transaction to be successful. Now, we live in interesting times. One of my professors said to me, 50% of what you learned 3 years ago, you would have forgotten. The other 50% you probably won't remember. So maybe if you don't keep on learning all the time, you might know nothing in a short while. So we have to definitely focus on our training. And one thing is certain, things are subject to change. And we can never predict the future. And in fact, if you needed to live in today's world, you needed to have been prepared yesterday already. So with that in mind, and particularly with some focus on our type of countries, let's talk from the African continent, let's talk from India, etc., typically maybe regarded as third world type countries, etc. Our drive as GMLS and together with Portall has always been that we will bring global training at the exact same or higher standards than what the first world does. However, we need to be aware what's developing in these particular areas. So one of the things I did as GMLS was I was aware the World Customs Organization, who's the global authority based in Brussels, had developed e-learning, etc., in-house, but for customs officers as well. I then approached them and requested that they provide this type of training also to be made available to the private sector, because it's always concerned me why the authority is training on the one side and why the private sector is training on the other side. Yet, if the private sector is compliant, it will make the duties and the task of the customs authority a lot simpler and a lot easier. So with that in mind, and through our representation, the World Customs Organization made us and 14 others the actual World Customs Organization private sector e-learning distributors, and this will become available to you through Portall in due course. I will just show you that on the screen very shortly, and just for you to see what it looks like. This is the WCO courses, and
sorry, Mark, it's just a whiteboard.
It's just a whiteboard. Just hang on, just 1 second. I just want to share the screen here. Just sorry, 1 moment. Let's just see if you are seeing the the screen there. Are you able to see the WCO screen at this stage?
No, it's just a whiteboard. Viewing whiteboard.
Just the whiteboard. Let's just quickly see reviewing the whiteboard. 1 moment. It's there. Sorry, it's this one. Just a moment. Sorry, the content that shows whiteboard. Hang on. Let me just close this. We must look here. Let me continue talking while Leanne quickly finds. We just see a whiteboard here. What I did want to show you was the WCO and all of its topics that it's dealing with currently. And very importantly today, unfortunately we just cannot seem to show you this, but very importantly today, and just 10 minutes before I joined you, we were online to the East African and Southern African WCO webinar, where we're looking at the challenges today, particularly in the light of COVID. Now, some of the things that came apparent is border closures, the impacts to customs officers that are in danger of being exposed to COVID, delayed cargo delivery, IT connectivity that's needed, loss of revenue due to sort of diminishing clearing volumes, etc., etc. Now, we are definitely moving towards an age of e-commerce. As Ted said just now, how many different webinars have we had, etc., etc. And going forward, You have arrived at the age of e-commerce. And e-learning, in fact, is that, because the traditional lecturer that goes to one venue and 20 students must take a bus or a taxi or whatever to get to one venue, etc., is no longer working. We have this in Southern Africa, where we develop training, where we may have students in Cape Town, Port Elizabeth, in Durban, etc., and we have to do delivery all at once, because we cannot afford to go in a physical presence to every single branch, because that delays the imparting of knowledge. So with single window systems in customs, alignment to the World Trade Organization's agreement on trade facilitation, and at the heart of trade facilitation is learning. So we have a document which we'll forward to you there, Mira, which also indicates and articulates the benefits of e-learning. And in that particular regard, many companies and organizations need to be convinced of the e-learning and the opportunities, and we will send that over to you. We're not sure if the screen is actually sharing at this particular stage again. I would like to bring it up. Can you see that on the screen?
We can, and you should send this to us, Mark.
Yes, and we'll send that to you, because many employers, employees, etc., need to be convinced of the benefits. And in this particular regard, you can see convenient and flexible access, 24/7, easy on the budget, serves different learning styles, etc., And all of this is what Portall is driving and where things are moving to in the future. As a closing remark and as a parting remark that I would like to put to Dr. Verma is that he will be familiar with the WCO's SAFE framework of standards, which gives the customs authority the additional burden of securing the global supply chain while still looking after compliance. Now, in that particular regard, the SAFE framework actually drives the fact that the customs authority should be the leader and driving education going forward into trade, because compliant trade leads to compliant customs declarations and so forth. So, with that in mind, and just for these opening remarks, we look forward to the future. We will remain prepared. And it's amazing to learn that just a few minutes ago in Africa, we've been dealing with the exact similar type of webinar as what you are driving forward. And we must congratulate you as Portall and as the Indian community for your drive and your foresight into this. Thank you, Mira.
Thank you so much, Mark. Indeed, we're all seeming to be pushing in the same direction, which is wonderful. Manish, last but not the least, request you to share your thoughts with us. Over to you, Manish.
Meera, first of all, thank you for inviting me to be a part of this panel. Some of the names on the panel are familiar faces, and I have had a privilege of exchanging my thoughts with them. But Dr. Rajesh Verma is someone whom I have not interacted with before, so some of his inputs were absolutely enlightening. The way I look at education and skilling is slightly different. Digitization and automation has created a scenario where every 3 or 4 years, each of us becomes redundant. Our knowledge which we gather becomes null and void. So there is always a continuous need of skilling and upskilling. What I learned while I was graduating was a language called C and C++. Nowadays, no one talks about those languages. So I have already become obsolete despite the fact that I have mastered a language. This is what digitization and automation does. And therefore, there is always a need that new skills are continuously to be learned. The way people work is different what they used to do 3 years or 4 years back. So skilling and upskilling will always be a challenge. The day each one of us decides to stop learning, we will become redundant. We will fall by the path. So that is one critical reason why I think that education in any form, e-learning especially, facilitates that process. That's one reason. The second reason is that with COVID, a lot of businesses and supply chain solutions have moved, which would mean that new supply chain corridors will be formed. A lot of businesses will move out of China and new supply chain corridors will be formed, which would mean that a lot of new people have to be trained and skilled on international regulatory norms, on international SOPs and international regulations. That's another big area of opportunity which I see from a skilling and learning process. What e-learning does for us is A, it lets a person learn on his own. B, it is not constrained by geography. You can sit in any part of the world and learn. C, you are not constrained by the time of the day. You can learn during the day, during the night. And B, you are not constrained by infrastructure. You don't need a classroom. Dr. Verma will give a very good example that in such heavy rains, we can sit in our houses and learn. So these are the key reasons why e-learning is done. So to take an example, what demonetization did to Paytm, COVID has done to Byju's. Byju's is the second most valued company in India after Paytm. And this has happened for simply the reason that the e-learning and the skilling which is available on Byju's is amazing, tremendous amount. And I believe that logistics industry is an area where there is great opportunity of not just learning, but also giving back to the society. What J.M. Bakshi Group and Portall is trying to do is also to give back the learnings which we have earned the last 100 years back to the society through our e-learning modules. So that's my opening remarks for you, Meera.
Hi, am I audible? Okay. Thanks so much, Manish. There was a sudden dip in the volume, so I wasn't sure I was audible. I am, right?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, Manish. And with that, we have completed with the first half of the webinar. We had actually put together an interesting poll for everybody. But considering the value that we're seeing in the comments, the depth that is coming out in the discussion, we're going to push this till the end of the webinar. So request everybody to please hang around. I'll quickly take questions, and for the question section, request my panelists to please keep it brief so that everybody who's here gets to get the answers to the maximum questions. I'll also try and bucket the questions to individual panelists basis my understanding of what would be the best fit. If somebody else particularly wants to step in, you're free to. So taking the first question, it is, how open is the maritime industry today in investing in training, especially through COVID? So a good question. Sorry, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, I lost something. The question is going out to Captain, will you please get started with the question?
Yes, Meera, thanks. The maritime industry, shipping industry in particular, while I have listed a huge bouquet of potential training programs that we can come up with, many of which actually add monetary value up the value chain to the industry. However, the very DNA of the shipping industry is such that they do not invest upfront in any. So the short answer to your question is sadly no. They don't invest in anything, but they are, to their credit, more than happy to have a kind of a time-slotted payment for any kind of training modules that you may come up with. They are happy to give you feedback on what their areas of competency development is or requirements are. But I think that's it. We will have to. I mean, if you're looking at it as a business proposition, look to other sources of funding rather than the customers themselves. That's my feeling.
Thank you. It was short and to the point, and thank you for sharing this, Captain Krish. Captain Yogesh Kaur, what's your opinion? You're somebody who probably would be on the other side of the budget. Is the industry today investing in training, and particularly through any hits that COVID takes?
So Meera, like we all are witnessing this COVID, and extended lockdown for many months. And at this point of time, we are really not sure that how long it is going to, happen, how many lockdowns we will be seeing in the coming months. So I would like to say that there is a strong need to embrace technology in order to promote skill development, and this can happen only through innovative practices in order to prepare the workforce to handle any kind of eventualities, any kind of challenges. So I do agree that at one point of time there were, a thought process that training was considered to be a kind of cost. But with the kind of current scenario where we are in, there is a change in the thought process. And with the help of technology, people have started taking training programs as a kind of investment being done in the workforces, which eventually, getting the productivity up, getting the kind of, returns for the businesses. So yes, there is already a start point in the change of mindset, and it will, I think, continue very strongly going ahead. So that's from my side.
Fantastic. That's wonderful to hear, particularly on the side of those of us who are in training and learning. Thank you, Captain. Mark, from the international perspective, also from the African continent perspective, do you see industry investing in training, particularly post-COVID?
I hope you can hear me there, Meera. Yes, we do find, unfortunately, that the trend has been that whenever times are difficult, one of the first expenses to be wiped off the budget is that of training. And it's very difficult to change the mindset of senior management to rather be thinking to use this situation and these times to in fact upskill and build their employees to the benefit of the organization in the future. So naturally, e-learning also is more affordable, and it's got a lot of different benefits. And if we could simply get our senior management in various organizations to align themselves to a new way of thinking, and to realize that if you invest in your people, that you will receive a return on investment. And rather than to keep thinking of keeping your budget to the minimum, which in fact will not give you long-term results. So that's my view, is we definitely need a culture and a mindset change here. And hopefully with your actions, and also, as I mentioned just now, many people will only train or do something whenever there's a compliance issue that drives them. Otherwise, they don't find it important. So obviously, with the help of the customs authorities and so forth, and putting an emphasis on capacity and uplifting skills, then our nation and our population will grow, because we want to do international trade on the same level of standard, if not better, than any first world country. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Moving on straight to the next question. The question is on assessment, and we do run into this question when we present e-learning, even at Portall EDU. The question is, in times of increased digital learning, how do you ensure assessment of the training? Is assessment a challenge when you pose a digital training or e-learning route? Dr. Rajesh Verma, I would like to start with you, if that's okay.
Sure. You see, in my opinion, assessment tends to be slightly tricky. Can you hear me, Meera?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah, thank you. Assessment for me of e-learning immediately tends to be tricky. You see, when I've been conducting trainings myself, the last 2 trainings on RTI, Right to Information Act, I had with my staff officers. One was comprising only of about 40 officers, another was almost touching 200. So 200, such a huge number, thinking of it, that itself was... And then here, unlike a typical classroom where we see the candidates, not just the upper torso, but the whole body, we see their hand movements, we tend to observe practically in the whole class. Any deviation can be easily noticed. A small twitch of the eye, a small smile, a glance sideways. Those small gestures can be picked up in a classroom, which I find absent in a virtual classroom. So the eye-to-eye contact which we have, that is missing. And in fact, the first virtual class, I'm not talking about webinar. Webinar, I know here are people who are all matured, whereas in a typical classroom, you are delivering content, and you want to be sure whether what you are saying is actually being understood by the other person on the other side of the camera. Here, I'm just talking to a camera. So for a classroom session, delivering content, it sometimes becomes difficult. And the instantaneous measure tends for one of the yardsticks which we can use is the chat box. The questions coming in, you can immediately halt and maybe change track, or sometimes deliberately inducing questions. Like I often do it in a, say, 1 hour lecture at 15 minutes around, and at 30 minutes, at 45 minutes. At these 3 intervals, I would indeed with a question where the answer is either yes or no, and I would expect the participants to answer that. A small way where they at least are moving in. I know that they are not switched off their videos and they are physically present, at least they're hearing me. And to what extent are they understanding? That's one simple way which I have tried to devise to this is, we are all in the exploratory stage, and from learning from each other, people would come up with better and more novel ideas. I remember one of my child, even he is attending these web online classes, and they have tests. And most of the times, you see that the children are using the mobile, the WhatsApp, to share the answers with each other. That school has a system where anything which, if they try to share on screen, it gets immediately reported to the teacher. The students have devised their own means. So they have come up now with a way that, okay, the parents would be sitting along with the children whenever they are conducting examination. This may be a morally for forcing things, but on a practical level, well, for a long-term study, like say you have taught somebody for 2 months, and now you want to evaluate how much he has learned. For that, we'll have to come up with some innovative models. What I really don't have a very specific answer, but immediate, instantaneous questions, that tends to give a teacher, and make sure that the participant writes back to the concerned teacher, the chat box, not addressed to everyone. I think that's one way. And we'll have to explore more means of assessing a person, how good or bad he's getting the content. Because for attitude and behavior too, people are holding online classes. I have my doubts to what extent we would exceed. It's better than not having anything, but physical classes, in my opinion, tends to have a much better impact on these behavioral things. Convenience, yes. Scalability, yes. All these parameters, e-learning fares very good. Assessment, one has to find a real good tool. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you, Dr. Captain Kaur, would you like to comment how would you handle assessment in the area of remote learning?
So, Meera, my views are also similar to Dr. Verma's, view, what he spoke. And the first challenge which we have, in our kind of industry, port industry, first of all, it's a challenge to get, people, the employees to the training room to make them undergo the training program. So that's the first challenge because we are so operationally focused. Now, coming to the assessment of the training program, so it is, of course, an area which needs to be evolved during the period of time. And for that, we need to probably have some kind of online evaluation system, platform, or a virtual training center for the whole process, which starts from your registration to your evaluation, and it also covers the process up to the certification. So the certification also to be given online. So that's the thought process. And in current situation, the kind of evaluation which we have is, first of all, your feedback mechanism, which is done right immediately after the training program, where you can quickly get how the program was from the trainees who have attended it. Second is your knowledge assessment. So that is basically to evaluate that how much the trainee has benefited from the training program. So that's the second thing. Third assessment is your application of the value addition to the present role, that how much value addition has happened with the training program. And the fourth one is the return on investment, which is slightly tricky and a bit complicated, depends upon industry to industry, that how they want to evaluate the return on the investment. So in this journey, I would say that we have to cover a long way to come up with a strong and robust methodology to assess the effectiveness of the training program. So that's from my side, Meera.
Thank you, Captain. Captain Krish, I'd request you to also take a jab at this question. You might have a different perspective.
Yes, I do, actually. I think we make a lot of assessment, and I personally think that if you make training very engaging, the assessment will follow. People have to answer questions because they have learned. It's a very personal sense of joy that you get, that you attended a good e-learning program, you understood a particular concept very well, and I think you would not spend so much effort at trying to cheat if the training was clear. On the other hand, if the training was boring, bland, lots of words, lots of slides, knowledge which you could anyway pick up from Google, you're being tested on it, then the student at any level of maturity tends to try and cheat. So that's first answer. I mean, I know it's a challenge. I agree with all the speakers that assessment can be a little bit of a challenge, but there are solutions. This is one. The second one is what I see with my daughters tends to basically to open. They say your limitation is time. We know that you could, in real life, you can Google any number of answers to any amount of questions. So as far as testing your knowledge and understanding knowledge is concerned, you can open the book. But if you don't know how to navigate within the book because you have not practiced it, you will lose out on time, and therefore you're going to lose out on the score, relatively speaking. So place limitations on time. The other thing is that given the technology, you don't have to have one single question paper for all the students. You can ask a different combination of questions to each student, so that they don't have this mass consultation on WhatsApp happening. There is a time limitation again. The clock is ticking. You have to answer. So without going into too much detail, I think technology has the answer to most of these cheating issues. And one of the most notable ones is a good and proper application of augmented reality or even virtual reality, immersive assessment systems. Because in my world, are very keen on skill. We place a lot of priority on skill, demonstration of skill rather than demonstration of the knowledge alone. Both are needed, but it's a very skill-driven industry. So if we are able to create training and assessment programs, especially assessment programs, based on immersive gaming and simulations, that you get all your answers there. I mean, if you could have PhD rattle off everything about internal combustion engine, but you put a spanner in his hand to fix the car engine, he would be lost. He wouldn't know where to start. That's the world we come from. So that's another way to solve this problem. But yes, I acknowledge it is a problem that needs to be solved.
Thanks so much, Captain. So I want the inputs from the panelists as well as the audience. We have at least 3-4 questions more. We've just crossed our 1 hour slot. I know that we can stretch it for a few minutes longer, but not very long. I also have inputs from a few of the panelists who would like to come back and have a conversation further to what Dr. Verma had said. So throwing it open, should we take the balance of the questions after the event on a one-to-one? And should we spend this valuable time engaging in a conversation between the panel?
Hi, Meera. May I come in here if you don't mind?
Please do.
Okay, thank you. I would like to touch on and thank you again to Dr. Verma and then obviously Captain Krish and Captain Yogesh. As in our partnership to Portall, etc., one of the services that we provide is the lecturing to university institutions. And with COVID, we've had to reach and create the bridge to the solution of the credibility and authenticity of online assessment. Now, one of the things that people can look forward to through Portall in future is the training of the trainer classes. So in other words, that's very important, as Captain Chris said. Then there are many software solutions where the credibility of online assessment can be conducted without fail from forms which open up different questions at different times, depending on the people that are in the class and so forth. But the main thing to understand here is that once you are satisfied, which Portall, etc., will provide as guidance in the future as to the credibility and authenticity of the online assessment, is the value of e-learning in terms of the absolute capturing and engagement of the learner. So what we would follow is the process of the outcomes, in other words, the learning outcomes. In the olden day of verbal talking, the knowledge retainment was approximately 10 to 15%. When PowerPoint, etc., came online, you would have a knowledge retainment of approximately between 30 to 40%. E-learning gives you the highest level of retention because it drives all the kinetic skills of engagement. It actually forces the person who's undertaking the e-learning to be interactive and to do so that the outcome is achieved. So I just wanted to give that short input as far as that was concerned, and assure everybody that these challenges are understood by Portall and they will be addressed so that authenticity and credibility will be maintained throughout into the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. That's so kind of you to speak for us as well. Thank you. Manish, I think you also wanted to respond. Would you like to do that now? We've decided to open. The floor is open. Stage, floor is open. Manish, would you like to start?
So I would want to comment on the part about assessment. There was a significant amount of discussion on that. I would feel that the learning modules need to be split into two kinds. One which are self-learning and objective-based, and secondly which require interactive kind of learning. And an assessment today, in today's technology, the assessments can be done what the term used is proctored, in which case there are cameras installed on the laptops, etc., which help prevent cheating in similar situations. So proctored test is a reality today. A lot of entrance exams in India are being conducted today under the proctored methodology. So that is a reality. However, what e-learning also does is that e-learning is not based on democracy, in the sense that there will always be people who have better connectivity, better equipment, and better location. So they are able to get connectivity, get connections to these courses much better than those who are in far off places. So e-learning is not based on equality. There are areas in near Bombay itself where connectivity is a big challenge, and students there are not able to really participate in such kind of online courses. So that's a challenge which still needs to be overcome for e-learning to be really becoming popular. As far as big cities are concerned, it's a no-brainer. But when you reach it to rural areas and outside the big cities, then it's a challenge, and which we are seeing. So these were my comments on the assessments in e-learning.
Thank you, Manish. Thank you. Paige, would you like to add your thoughts, please, on what has been
Yes. So I think, my fellow panelists have said a lot to say, but I think what is very pertinent and important to note is that we have to self-assess ourselves. Today we are moving to a regime where we have teacherless learning. If you see platforms like Khan Academy, Udemy, the one-on-one connect with the faculty is not there. However, the ability to learn at your own pace is there. To give you an example, I did a program on Google Data Studio over the last few months. It took me about a week to get through, but I had the ability to learn at my own pace, stop where I had to, restart, relearn where I had to, which I would not have the privilege of doing that in a classroom or a traditional environment. Also, the methods of learning and the methods of assessment have to change. One very key fact which we all forget, it's very easy to say, upskill, but I think the real word is to relearn. For those of you who don't know, a very interesting fact. So I used to be a professional athlete, and I trained, in tennis. Now, if you learnt a stroke, so there is a concept called muscle memory. So typically, when you swing, and if you swing 2,500 times, that stroke goes into your muscle memory. Now, if by chance you have learned the wrong stroke, it takes you 3 times the effort to unlearn. So 7,500 strokes to unlearn, and another 2,500 strokes to learn. So you are effectively taking 4 times the effort. Now combining that on the learning platform and also the ability to put that in a classroom or in a business environment. So let's assume today as a freight forwarder, you enter the details of a bill of lading incorrectly, or you transmit data on compliance requirements to customs in a export entry or a import entry incorrectly. The cost to fix that problem is at least more than 4 times. So a lot of times, and I quite agree with Mark when he says that education is one place where in tough times, that is the first thing that's crossed out on a lot of companies' lists. However, it's very important that you are able to make sure that you teach or train your teams not to make a mistake. You will not have these problems take place again. Hello?
Yeah, Tej. Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay. So I think, coming back to that, it's very important to think of different ways of assessment. And you will find that a lot of students are different learners. I've never agreed with that traditional learning system that we had. I've always believed in practical because typically street learning is where the experience arises. If you look at the way NASEN has revolutionized training, I must compliment the department for doing so much training for internal officers, and they embarked on training even for custom brokers. They had some programs for customs brokers to upgrade their skill set. Even if you look at the customs exam, which used to be a traditional 3-hour exam, is now a multiple choice exam. Like that, the learning ability has changed. And, just one last takeaway. A very interesting fact, when I was taking an interview of one girl, she was probably between 19 to 22. So she had very interesting things to say. She said, sir, if you want me to learn, you have to make it short and sweet. If you make it more than 5 minutes or 15 minutes, my attention span will deviate. So that is where e-learning as a concept, has a high impact. And that is where our assessment is interesting. Thank you.
Thank you, Tej. And thank everybody for their patience. I believe we have close to 100 attendees and we've overshot time. Everybody is still with us and enjoying this webinar. I'm going to call a halt to the questions. My deepest regrets, we will write back to you one-to-one with the questions and the answers after this. Handing over now with great pleasure to Lee to take the summing up comments from the panelists and proceed to close this event. Lee, welcome.
Thank you, Mira, and thank you to everybody. I think it's very important that in global trade we have everybody working together and we have really good leaders. And I'd like to thank the panelists for being good leaders and joining today, as well as Portall for hosting a webinar like this. Third world countries need to be up to date with global standards, and therefore having a webinar like this helps us in doing so and helps countries such as Africa and India and many more to be kept up to date. Between GMLS and Portall, we will continue to provide solutions for assessments and accountability. And I'd like to thank all the attendees and the panelists for attending today. And going on to closing remarks, we'd just like to ask what needs to be done to develop self-learning and e-learning culture in the maritime and logistics education, and what is the role of the government and the industry in this. If we can start with Captain Krish, please.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah, can you hear me? All right. Role of the government, is that what you said?
Correct. The role of the government and the industry in this?
Okay. The role of the government is usually driven by the administration, whether it will be the customs or the DGCA in aviation, Directorate General Shipping, flag administrations, and so on. Again, I don't want to sound cynical, but governments have a habit of usually being about 10 years behind technology. They always catch up, and it's not because they are not very good at keeping themselves updated. It is just that rules and regulations are made on minimum requirements. I think Manish made a very valid point that if you don't have connectivity to the rural parts of your country and your constituency, then the government will be a little reluctant to push e-learning forward. So there are certain issues. The role of government is to ensure that aspects of syllabus and assessments are in compliance. And as long as Mark said, to demonstrate proper proctoring and proper coverage of the necessary syllabus for the statutory elements of the training program, I think the government's role will be related to that. On the other hand, the industry, especially my industry, has to gain from this opportunity here to, getting much better by a multiple efforts. Benefit, but as I always front, they're happy with the least. There is a need for those who are planning or envisioning e-learning to get into all segments of the industry or the supply chain itself. I think we should not look for investment from the customers. We should be looking elsewhere for it. But rough calculations that I've been making over the last few months is that maritime training alone has anything like an internal rate of return of about 17%, with a few million dollars investment upfront. We'll have to find the kind of funding for it. Industry is more to provide feedback as well as leads out any kind of training, especially customized B2B training, address their pain areas, and there will be pain areas. They're dealing with human beings, competency issues will be there, and as Manish said, we get obsolete very fast. Technology is moving at a rapid pace, so it's all there, but industry is not going to support you with finance. That's my take.
Thank you, Mandanti.
Thank you.
You're muted, Lee. You're muted.
Thank you so much. Can you hear me?
We hear you well.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much, Captain Krish. If we can go over to Captain Yogesh.
Yeah, thank you so much. So we, already discussed a lot about it. So would like to sum up that the logistic is a major, growth sector in the world economy, and it is playing an important enabler and partner role for the other sectors for expanding their freight and trade volume. So that's the kind of importance which the logistic industry is playing, currently. And it is very critical to have a continuous training and skill development workshops, which can be either online or which can be either offline, depending upon the circumstances. We also discussed and agreed that e-learning in current scenario gives a lot of advantage in terms of flexibility regarding the time. People can do the learning in their own pace and at their own, time. It is also easy on the budget, and traveling, etc., is not a constraint when you are doing a kind of e-learning program. So trade is already on the right track. Probably, government also need to come up with the same kind of pace and decide. If we talk about in India, the government of India has launched e-Vidya program for the multi-mode access to digital online education, and which is really a great advantage, and it's kind of great boost towards the e-learning program. So we are on the right track, and probably we will be able to achieve much more successes as we move ahead. So that's from my side. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Captain Yogesh. And then over to Tesh.
Hello. Hello. Yes, can you hear me, Leah?
Yes, I can hear you, Tej. Thank you.
Are we on the last question? Because I think I got disconnected in between.
Yes, correct. We're just on the closing remarks of what needs to be done to develop self-learning and the e-learning culture in maritime logistics, and what is the role of government and the industry in this.
So I think we need to look at this as 2 points. The first thing is we need to set some goal as industry. What we need to realize is that self-learning has never been in our DNA. We've always gone to a class to learn. And the mindset has to change, and it's changing very quickly today. So gone are the days where you would complete school and then go to maybe a private class to learn what you had to learn. So you have a lot of learning management systems which are giving you the ability to learn. So industry on the whole has to take the lead in doing a lot of programs and platforms, and I agree with what my fellow panelists have said in terms of continuous learning. So we have to plan for the next generation. Now, when we look at it at the short term, industry and the government has to play a major role in upgrading skill sets, because with the fast changes that are coming in the global environment, I don't think it's local anymore. One has to stay abreast with various topics. So in my opening remarks, I did speak about various verticals of learning. So if you have such skill-based programs and self-assess, in that case, you would encourage people more. Often we go to a program and we want to see what is the result of that. What we must sometimes out of fear of assessment, they may not sign up for a program, or they may not perform well in a program because they get nervous. Although, so we need to create an environment where we allow them to learn. To complement what I spoke earlier about the customs having a new multiple choice exam for customs brokers, it is a step in the right direction. A lot of people think that multiple choice is very easy to address, but you can see the government's role in upskilling, in giving a very practical learning, to contributing towards that step. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Tesh. Thank you. Yeah. And then over to Mr. Rajesh.
Yeah, that's all. Even
Mr. Rajesh?
Hello, can you hear me?
Hi, yes, we can hear you. Thank you.
Yeah. I am in customs, but I can't speak for the whole government per se. Just as I am not endorsing the product support here, my view here would be that, you see, a typical importer or exporter, whenever he is importing something, or a big businessman, if he is importing something, a small person who has very little work would perhaps hire the services of somebody else, whereas a big businessman, he can afford, he would employ an expert of that field to work for him. That's how typically the business has been going on, and over the period of time, the professional who is providing his services on hire or who is employed, he keeps on upgrading his services, otherwise he can't just remain in business. It is one of the, I should say, components, the inputs, which is required for the person to be in service, right? If he has to be in business, he has to change. He has to, because the world is changing fast. It's quick. As far as our department is concerned, whenever there's a change, we bring out public notices. We have meetings with the different associations. We have a grievance redressal mechanism where people can come up with their particular complaints. Usually there would be some videos by the department or a detailed public notice saying what are the changes, how it's going to happen, and there would be some sort of hand-holding if it is a major change. Like GST, it happened. The kind of exercises which were done, massive, tremendous. So I would disagree with what Captain Krish said, that government is 10 years behind. I mean, I beg to strongly disagree with that. And yes, village connectivity, well, it does cause a problem because there is no very fast connection. But even with 3G, no, things are better, and 4G is already reaching in. And I think if a customer wants something, he has to invest in. You cannot expect, I mean, for your learning, you have to improve, and it is your own survival. The individual industry, in my personal opinion, should come forward and make it. Just as they buy machines, they make people learn the skills of how to run a machine. The same way, people should be taught how to deal with the different provisions. Just as we am dealing with the different legal provisions and complying with them is a part and parcel of every industry to survive and to grow. So it is a legal framework. One has to be updated. One has to acquire the things. Government in its own way has been doing a lot of things, different programs. I mean, just today, we got a thing that for all the government servants, almost which are more than a crore, from across different departments, government is making up a portal where fortunately 4 of my batchmates are a part of that, where they are trying to develop the different needs. I think industry as a whole should come forward, and maybe they can also try to go, because broad changes of policy are being told by the government. For individual person, how that would be important, that person would have to assess, and these kinds of industry initiatives like we are having today, they can help in to share knowledge and maybe go towards a better future. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Rajesh. We appreciate that.
That the government and the industry in general have been slow to uptake on the e-learning platform. The COVID situation has created a scenario where we see a lot of traction between the industry and the government. The government, with its Ministry of Skill Development and with the Confederation of Indian Industry, has set up a non-for-profit organization called the Logistics Skill Council, which is encouraging e-learning companies and educators to enter into the field of creating learning modules and learning packages for the logistics industry. Surprisingly, we are seeing a lot of corporates approaching Portall for its EDU platform and wanting to train all their internal users. So this has been a very pleasant surprise for us that the corporates have started approaching us directly, and they see a value proposition in educating and upskilling their internal staff. So these two changes we have seen during the COVID era. Just to share some statistics with you, we launched Portall EDU on 1st of April, and in 3 months' time, we have about 3,000 plus users registered with EDU. This is one of the fastest growing platforms we have seen in this industry, and which makes us believe that we are on the right track, and EDU and learning as a service is there to stay here in the logistics space. That's my concluding remark, and I would like to take this opportunity of thanking partners like 21CC, partners like GMLS, and other content providers who have been working with us, and experts like Captain Krish and Mr. Verma, Tej, etc., for helping us achieve some of the synergies with the trade bodies and synergies with the learning professionals in this industry. Thank you all so much for your continued support.
thank everybody, and especially from Portall, all the attendees, and especially to Mira. Thank you for hosting this webinar, and we look forward to chatting with everybody again. Thank you.
Thank you all. Thank the attendees. Thanks the panelists. It's really been a privilege and a lot of interesting conversation. Many thanks. Attendees, thank you and goodbye.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you very much.
Dr.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Captain Kish, Captain Yogesh, Sage, thank you so much. Manish, thank you.